Hello, Phil. How you doing?
You had a little pause there. Were you just sort of holding on to the internet so that the video worked because you didn't get it going last time?
I was hoping. Also, because you can test these things, but my audio is sounding a bit glitchy. So let me know if it sounds like a bad audio line to you, and I might have to work on that.
Right. Me.
Are you mocking me? I can tell what you're doing. I can see what you're doing. You're very clever. Anyway, how are you, Phil?
I'm very well, Dan. A week of school strikes, a boy with a upset tummy, trip to London and the dentist. I'm feeling remarkably calm. How are you?
Well, okay, yeah, school strikes, thunderstorms, overexerting myself playing five-a-side football.
You're still playing five-a-side football?
Well, you say still like I've been doing it for years. I've only played 3 times in the last 12 years, and all 3 of those have happened in the last month.
All right, fair enough.
But I've still got functioning limbs, which is a great bonus.
Yes.
We've got quite a lot to get through today, and
big show.
Hello to everybody that is watching this either live or on playback. We're going to do a slight adjustment to our running order on the basis that a small thing happened in the world of social media this week that we think has to take precedence. So we're going to drop the bit about sales that we previously talked about and salespeople tactics on social, and we will come back to that on a subsequent episode. But today we are going to talk about what on earth is going on at Twitter. We are going to talk about the new Twitter competitor, Threads, and we are going to talk about what recent revelations about the way in which the LinkedIn algorithms mean for you as a user, so that you can make the most of them, use them to your advantage. Do you think that does it justice, Phil?
That's enough for me before lunchtime.
Excellent stuff.
I'll be having a hangry conversation about algorithms and getting really mad with it by the time we finish. Also, thanks to Joe, who's just commented to say our audio sounds good to him, which is good for me.
Excellent. This makes me feel less concerned slightly, because it's playing merry hell with my ears right now. Thanks, Joe. Right, so Phil.
Yes, Twitter.
Where to begin?
Is anybody still there? Previous to the launch of Threads, it hasn't really been going all that well for Elon Musk and Twitter. And a few days ago, it was announced that he would be putting a limit on the number of tweets that you could look at on a daily basis. Initially, it was going to be 600. I think he upped it to 1,000 due to, quote, scraping and manipulation on the platform, which all sounds a bit paranoid to me. And so, I think the question really is whether this is the death knell for Twitter. I know, you've got some thoughts on this, Dan. What's your sort of experience been in terms of how bad Twitter's been getting of late?
Well, I think this is the latest in a long line of sort of increasingly strange decisions that have been made. So, if you think about things like the verified Twitter Blue status, that went from being something which was associated with a relative degree of authority and merit to something which is now paid for and anybody can get.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the compelling proposition for Twitter Blue is that you wouldn't be affected by things like that rate limit. You'd get 10 times as many tweets that you could view in a given day if you were paying Twitter for it. But my sense is really that for some time, I personally have found it very hard to kind of get value from the platform. I think the main news feed has been a bit of a cacophony of noise rather than reflecting the people that I was following some time ago. I did sort of decide recently to dip back into it a little bit to see if I could get any value out of it.
Did you get any value from it?
Well, I guess there were a couple of instances where I had customer service requirements and they got, answered through Twitter. But beyond that, not really, no. I didn't feel like when I went back into it that there was a compelling reason to stick around and keep on checking it. So I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And anybody that looks at my Twitter profile will see minimal activity. But that's because it just didn't feel useful anymore.
Are you live streaming this to Twitter, by the way? I think I am.
I am. I'm live streaming this to Twitter, just so that Elon Musk can see it and make some notes on
Get
his
shut
product
down any
development.
second now, Dan. That's going
Yeah,
to be it.
yeah,
Actually, I saw
absolutely.
somebody in my sort of professional circle, a lady called Amelia Tarode, who is a creative director, freelance creative director, and runs her own agency. And she's been really into Twitter for
Mm,
years. And one of those people in our kind of circle that didn't really give up, that carried on tweeting. And then she got banned, like completely and utterly randomly. I don't know if she's had her account reinstated yet, but she was really upset about it because like she just
mm,
hadn't done anything wrong whatsoever and had her account banned. And it's just kind of stuff like this. That's what happens when you lay off 75% of your workforce, I suppose. So and the
yeah,
outages and all the rest of it. So yeah, I don't know whether
yeah,
I'll be spending much more on time on Twitter. I have to say it's something that I only very occasionally use, and it's more like kind of reading a tabloid newspaper to me, a kind of bit of a guilty secret. I don't really get any value from it myself. But there might be other
yeah.
people out there watching this, even on playback, that do get some value from Twitter. So we'd love to hear from you if you do. But yeah, so I guess we really need to sort of decide whether it's something that's worth talking more about. We're going to introduce a new feature, Dan, to this show, which we agreed beforehand, where we're going to have a little kind of yes/no answer to a question. So for each topic, we're going to have a yes/no answer. And if you're watching this live, you can join in and in the comments and let us know your thoughts. So I'll pose the question, and then you and I will put up the answer at the same time on a kind of 3, 2, 1, and then see whether we
Okay,
agree with each other, and then we can have a cage fight if we don't.
okay.
So
Yeah,
that's the way to settle an argument now. Have a cage fight.
it's the logical conclusion.
So the question for this one is, right, first question, will Twitter still be around in 18 months?
Okay.
So anybody watching this, do you think Twitter's going to be around in 18 months' time? Quite so. It's not, is Twitter rubbish? Is it just going to die within the next 18 months? Okay, so should we do a 3, 2, 1 on this?
Okay, we're revealing on one.
Yeah, okay, revealing on 1. 3, 2, 1. Oh, damn.
Oh, yours says on, not no.
Did you know that there...
Look at that. Yeah, see?
It's not better.
Look at that.
I'll sort my...
I'm afraid the audio is dropping out at the moment for me, Phil. So I can't hear you speaking at all. But I'm going to use this opportunity to drop in some of the comments that we've had. So Joe Edge says she has a few clients that see value with Twitter, but it's certainly one to keep an eye on. Okay, so still existing clients there. And we have Joe Bennett, who simply says yes. Now, my hope is that we are going to be joined by Phil again in the not too distant future, and that also you can hear me. So please drop into the comments if you can still hear me. I think Phil has had some technical issues and has dropped off. But let me just kind of explain my answer, my yes. So my gut feeling is that Twitter is going to be around in 18 months, but I don't believe that it will be in the current form that it's in at the moment. I think if it continues on its current path, it's going to hemorrhage users. I think that is going to result in potentially a change of ownership down the line. And I think it will come back in a smaller form, but I think this is pretty damaging in terms of reputational impact. Hi, Phil. Welcome back. Can you hear? Can you hear us? Can we hear you? We can't hear you at the moment, Phil. So I'm going to keep on going whilst Phil tries to sort it out. I'll take you off the screen, and then you can work out what you're going to do in the background and wave violently in the background when you are ready. Um, so yeah, I think it will come back, but I think it'll be in a slightly different format. I think there's every chance that it could become more of a right-leaning ecosystem as well that would possibly clash with things like Donald Trump's Truth Social. That is my gut feeling. Its utility hasn't been great for a while, and it needs some serious reinvention to get that to work. Hopefully, Phil is back in the house. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Still can't hear you, I'm afraid, Phil. Um, can anybody in the comments, anybody watching, can you just let us know if you can hear either of us talking at the moment? That would be hugely appreciated. Just drop a comment to let us know, because we may need to revert to cancelling the stream if we can't hear each other. I am going to have to presuppose what Phil thinks about Twitter. He thinks it's going to die on its backside. Please, anybody watching at the moment, let me know what's what. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Haley. Thank you, Joe. It is Phil that they can't hear. They can
Still
hear
can't
me.
hear us, Dan.
You are back. I can hear you now.
I've gone all.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. You were all very kind people. Thank you for coming out of the shadows and letting us know that you can hear us. Apologies, we do have these occasional technical issues. So, Phil, I've said that I think it is going to come back. I've said, stick around. I've said that it will probably evolve considerably and may even involve a change of ownership to that end.
Okay.
What is your reason that it's going to die?
Why do I think it'll die? Well, I just don't think it's got the legs to survive. I think the Meta alternative is going to be a knockout blow. So it's it. It's going to be gone.
Okay. Well, that obviously takes us very neatly into the next subject.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that everybody has been talking about. So, just in case you don't live in the comms marketing world and you are not an intensive user of social media, this week saw Meta, the parent company of Facebook, launch Threads, which is its direct challenger to Twitter. And I have to say, the timing could not have been much better from Meta's perspective, could it? What's your kind of key take on the Threads journey, Phil? I've talked a lot, so let me hand over to you to say a few words.
Well, I have to say I've been quite impressed with the way they've launched it. I think the idea of having it tied to your Instagram account is very clever. So you automatically have an audience built in. A lot of people have talked about that. So I think that's a good feature. I like the idea of it sort of being very, very familiar in terms of a user experience. Some would say a copy. Elon Musk would anyway. So describe it as a copy of Twitter. And I think that's actually a good thing. I think a familiar look and feel is good. I like the idea of it being built as sort of a friendlier, safer place to do business. So let's just see how that rolls out. I see my audio is, you tell me if my audio is patchy. So I'm actually going to re-log in, and I'm afraid I've got a very hot computer. So I will see how things are going. But you take over, Dan, and I'll see if I can get things better.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. Right. So what is everybody thinking about Threads at the moment? Would love to hear in the comments what you think about its utility, because for me, that's one of the main things. I'm looking at this from the perspective of the kind of people that I tend to work with, which is typically business to business leaders. I've really struggled over the last few years to recommend that they invest a lot of their time on a platform like Twitter for all of the reasons that we previously discussed. And right now, I think it's way too soon to start encouraging those leaders to invest some of their limited time in a platform like Threads. That said, from a personal perspective, I've actually found the first 24 hours of Threads to be really interesting, and it does feel a bit like it did in the early days of Twitter. If you agree with that. If you disagree with that, let me know in the comments. It is appreciated. Um, yeah, I think the pace of change seems to be quite quick. So when I started out, the feed was incredibly jumbled. It was a complete mess of people that I had no interest in, but I muted hard, really, really hard to kind of curate more of a feed based on who I actually wanted to follow. I think the link in with Instagram was a brilliant move because it's immediately given familiarity and access to that base, that user base that some of the other platforms like Mastodon, Blue Sky, etc., just don't have. And I think the user interface, although the feed is confusing, the user interface is actually really nice and straightforward. And my hope is that they maintain that straightforward, simplistic approach, and they don't overload it with a lot of additional features that kind of made Twitter start to feel a lot more bloated, and just difficult to derive value from. Just going to put a comment here from Joe Edge. Yeah, so far so good. I'm liking Threads, but it's too early to know how it might pan out for businesses. Completely agree. There's definitely shiny new toy syndrome abound at the moment, and I'm acutely aware of the fact that the kinds of people that are likely to jump on a new platform like this are very likely to be involved in brand marketing communications, and there's a risk that we go native, and we start encouraging people to do things that actually aren't that helpful in the longer term. We have a comment here from Matthew Cotton. So definitely more of a casual social theme, which is a great foundation for a user, especially in the early stages. Businesses usage will ramp up for sure in 2024 when they start to facilitate ads. Yeah, I completely agree that from a consumer perspective, consumer business, B2C business, as soon as the ad targeting comes in, it's really going to pay dividends now. But I think from a B2B, the individual B2B user, I think there is a leader rather. I think the jury is still out as to exactly when you would lean into it and really start to see the value. It all depends on whether or not your target audience is going to be there, it's going to be active, and there's an opportunity to engage with them more effectively. I understand that there may be some other connection issues, possibly with my end. If you are still seeing me, let me know in the comments. I'm not sure if we will get Phil back on the line at this stage, but I'm just going to check my messages to make sure he is frozen out at the moment. So we'll carry on with the discussion. But what are your early views on Threads? Do you have a different opinion to me? Do you think that you would be recommending to business leaders that they should be actively leaping into Threads at this stage, in the very, very sort of nascent stages of its launch? It'd be really good to hear. My kind of main advice to any clients right now would be put it into a watching space. I think there is an opportunity for relatively early adopters, but I don't think it needs to be this early. And I think if somebody is already really actively using a platform like Twitter and they are feeling disenfranchised by it, you can apply, it would seem that you can apply similar user techniques or tactics on this platform to achieve those kind of comms ambitions. What I would say though, is you've got to be very wary of treating Threads exactly the same way that you would treat Twitter. So, for example, if you are, hi Phil, welcome back. If you are utilizing Threads, remember that the user base is coming from Instagram. That means that it's not necessarily the same people that were on Twitter, just because the approach is similar. And the reason they're using it won't necessarily be the same as those people on Twitter or possibly even Instagram. So I think that's why I'm encouraging people to take a step back. It's way too soon make that assessment once you've had a chance to see who's using it, how they're using it, and whether or not the audiences that you actually need to get in front of are there in kind of any volume to be able to justify using your already limited time to that platform. Phil, I don't know how much of that you would have heard, but what is your take on Threads?
Sorry for the technical glitches, Dan. Hopefully you can hear us all right now.
No worries.
Actually streaming from my phone. My computer is hot to the touch now, so that's new experience doing this by phone. Yeah, yeah, Threads. So yeah, I'm, as I said before, I'm pretty impressed with it. I think there's one thing that they've really got to make sure that they pay attention to, and that is the idea of safety and content moderation. So if you look at the fact that they're quite similar services and one's billed as a friendlier place, and everybody seems to be quite pleased to be over there, and one of the big disadvantages of Twitter at the moment is it's a cesspool. They've really got to make sure they're hot on that. And let's face it, if you think about Meta, it hasn't got the best record when it comes to privacy and some of those issues itself. So I think that'll be the hill it lives or dies on, is whether it manages to handle that effectively.
Yeah.
But I overheard you there just talking a little bit about whether people should be diving in and using it now. And
yeah,
you seem to have a cautious approach.
Yeah, I think obviously it's very, very early days, and you posted the other day about how long before we get how to make six-figure salary from your thread strategy and things like that. All of that kind of early enthusiasm, I think, needs to settle down. We need to see if the kinds of people that senior leaders need and want to get in front of are actually using this platform at scale. My view was that with a platform like Twitter, it's very hard to justify that person investing the time that it takes to build and develop an effective presence on that platform. And to me, that means that the bar for actually starting to do that on a new platform like Threads has to be pretty high. So if you know that the audience that you need to get to is there, by all means jump into it. If it's not clear whether or not those audiences there at any scale, I would be holding back and investing my time on a platform like LinkedIn instead.
Yeah, I think one of the things to consider is whether somebody currently uses Instagram in a personal capacity. So if you're a busy executive, business owner, sales leader, or whatever, and you've got, that's how I use Instagram. I'm not a CEO, but I use it for personal purposes, and I keep it quite locked down and private. So then I've imported my audience over, and it's quite a personal audience. So it might take a while to build up the professional side if that's how I want to use it. So I think there's a case there. Having said that, I don't see, particularly if you're already a Twitter user, I don't see the harm in having a try. I think actually in these early stages, people are quite forgiving with a bit of experimentation, and it's the safe space to do it. So I think if an executive was quite comfortable with social media, personally, I would say give it a go. I think there's also a thing about grabbing your brand while there is this window as well.
100%.
So if you own a company, make sure you get in there and grab your URL quickly, because otherwise you might not get the account name that you want. So I think that's important. I'd be kind of like, go for it. If you want to experiment, I think now is the time to do it in a relatively safe environment.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I do recognise that those people are in the minority, the kind of people that will already be actively doing this. So I still think that for the vast majority of people, if they're asking themselves, should I be doing this? The answer is probably right now, no, but you should be paying attention to it and just keeping a watching brief.
Yeah.
So question from Daffod, or a comment from Daffod, perhaps because of the Insta-tie, and I think the B2B type conversations are going to jar with the culture at the moment. Perhaps it just needs to have enough time for business communities to build. Yeah, I agree. And at the moment, it would be like Salesforce opening an Etsy shop. I'd like to see that. I think that's something that we need to feed into Midjourney to find out what that might look like, a Salesforce Etsy shop. But no, I completely take your point, Daffod. You're right. I think, as I say, it's too soon right now. It needs more time to bed in before you could really justify, in my view. So I have totally played the cards on this one, Phil. But yes, the question, should business execs be actively using Threads today? My answer is 3, 2, 1, negative.
I've got my thing the wrong way around again. Which has changed the
Right.
mirror thing. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're both on a different side on that one, but that's fine, isn't it?
It's the
No
beauty of
cage
it.
fight. This
We
is
can. Well, let's not leap to a cage fight. Let's just have a
post-it
debate
notes
on
is
Threads
fine.
and see how that pans out.
Okay.
Right. So conscious we've had a bit of disruption here, but we still want to get onto this third topic that we
Yes.
had earmarked, which is the LinkedIn algorithm, and in fact, what that means in practice for you as a regular user of LinkedIn. So, Phil, what are we
Yeah,
talking about?
so for those of us that are spent quite a long time on LinkedIn, you probably have already seen the news that LinkedIn has updated the algorithm. In a nutshell, what that means is they've responded to feedback that they've had. There was a great interview on Entrepreneur Magazine with Daniel Roth and Alice Jong, and they were talking about the changes that they've made responding to feedback. And overwhelmingly, people don't want too much what sometimes gets described as Facebook content, too much personal stuff. They want to have more things that are relevant to the world that they work in. So they will be changing or are in the process of changing what you see in your feed. So you're more likely to see stuff from first degree connections from people you know quite well. And you're also more likely to see content that has, quote, knowledge and advice rather than personal content. So that's what they've told us. I think it's still fair to say this is in the process of being rolled out. But Dan, what have you noticed in your feed and your use of LinkedIn, both for yourself and clients, after this algorithm update?
Not a huge amount. We have let's kind of give people a peek behind the curtain, Phil. We have a WhatsApp back channel between between us, where when I see things that frustrate me on LinkedIn, I tend to send them directly to Phil, either as a screen cap and say, "Why on earth is this still appearing?" And a lot of the time, that is one of the things that they've talked about kind of reducing, which is selfies. And there is this habit, and I don't know if it's kind of demographic or just algo gaming, but this habit that people have of just putting up a selfie that has absolutely no relation to what they're talking about whatsoever. And without wanting to sound chauvinistic at all, a lot of the time that is quite attractive younger women that are posting these selfies, and it's counterproductive, I think, for building credibility and establishing yourself as an authority, if the way that you're trying to do that is by posting these selfies that just they don't relate to what you're doing. My hope is that as they roll these changes out, they're able to kind of distinguish between a selfie like that versus a selfie of somebody who's meeting people that they work with, or involved in maybe there's a volunteer project where there's a team selfie and they're showing themselves actually doing something that relates to the working world. But yeah, I've long kind of held the belief that the most useful thing that you can do as a person trying to build a network and an audience on LinkedIn is to offer useful advice and to share your experience and your knowledge. So anything that does more to put that kind of thing into the feed has to be a real positive. Have you seen any changes yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we've talked about before on this is as reach has gone down across the board, and that
Yes.
arguably could be that they're matching content up with audiences better, perhaps. And yeah, I've seen that some of those what previously did well, selfie type posts, are not doing quite so well. I don't have a problem with selfies if it's in context or it adds value. So if
Yes.
you've got
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
team shot at an event that you've got your whole team together and you're proud to have everybody there in this one space and you do a picture on that, to me that is in context. And I think there's three, and you've touched on one of them there. I think there's three big questions that we sort of really need to think about around
Mm.
the algorithm update. And one is, firstly, is what you just said, whether the algorithm can understand the context of a photo and whether it is, adding some value or whether it is purely a personal post. and to serve those personal posts to people that are interested in that. Um, who knows what that is. I think the second one is around the idea that they seem to be encouraging people to show an ownership of a particular area, like what's your expertise, what are you known for. I don't know if you've noticed that you get those little prompts sometimes on LinkedIn now where it says, do you find this author or topic interesting? Have you had some of those? I
Yeah,
think
a couple of
that's where
those.
it's trying to calibrate it around. And I think the second question is whether you can own more than one topic. So can you be like you're very passionate about mental health, Dan. So
Mm,
can you own or be an authority on mental health and be an authority on corporate communications? I don't
mm.
know how it'll do that. I don't know if you got any thoughts on that one.
Well, I think it has to be able to do that, right? Because you think about any senior business leader, they've got their domain expertise, but they're also a leader of people as well. And we're told so often about the value of soft skills in leadership and encouraging team development and things like that. If LinkedIn has to find a way of allowing somebody to demonstrate that they're not just a one-trick pony, they can do both of those things. Um, I wonder whether or not over time that will be finessed relative to the topics that you associate yourself with when you're, for example, switching on creator mode, because you
Yeah,
can list
yeah.
5 different things you associate, can't you? Um,
I'd wondered if creator mode, so pet theory, is basically just an experiment for LinkedIn to use as a categorize. It's a piece of research to use to
mm,
categorize people because you don't have to pay any extra for creator mode. So why have they created it? Why have they built it? And I think they're just using it as a way of getting data, like people actually saying what
I
they want to be known for, and then compare that to what they're actually putting out.
Yeah, but the interesting thing with that is how the collaborative articles, so the AI collaborative articles evolves. Because I don't know about you, but I'm being asked to contribute to a lot of things that are definitely not in the territory that I kind of specialize and
Okay.
I talk about in my activity. So
Yeah.
they're kind of tangential, but they're not they're not related to things that I talk about on a regular basis or that I
Yeah, that's
engage with on a
interesting.
regular basis.
I don't get asked to contribute to anything, so take it as a
Um,
compliment. They think you're a very broad person, Dan, that's got a
that's
view on all of
true.
these different things. Anyway, the third
Yeah.
one, the third question is, and I think this one is a huge one actually, whether LinkedIn's AI can now understand that you want to consume different content to what you produce. So I produce a lot of content about corporate communications, LinkedIn, sales, social selling, that kind of stuff. I don't actually want to see too much of that
Yeah.
because they're not the people that I'm in particularly interested in connecting with. It's nice to get it for a kind of peer review thing and to a certain extent, but I want to reach a different audience and consume different content to what I'm creating. Basically,
Mm.
I might be making business decisions myself and need advice around I don't know, insurance or whatever it is. I want to see different things to what I'm actually putting out. And I think there's a problem at the moment brewing where it's just giving you what you're making.
Well, I think there's that as well, but I think it's partly on the user as well. So it's probably about 12 months ago, you and I had a conversation where I was talking about trying to kind of define what my target audience was.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Do you remember that
yeah,
discussion?
yeah. I remember us
And
talking about that. Yeah,
I'd kind of fallen into the trap of kind of assuming what my target audience was and that it would be similar to yours. But in actual fact, because we've got very different kind of background experiences, mine is really quite distinct from your target audience.
yeah, yeah.
And that was kind of a wake up call for me, really, because I kind of became aware of the bubble that you kind of enter into in LinkedIn if you are connecting with lots of other people who do a very similar thing to you or in a
Exactly
very
that.
similar sector.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I've made a concerted effort to not do that now, and to kind of I'm trying to nurture a community, a network of people that aren't just doing what I'm doing, but are actually doing things elsewhere in organisations that are more interesting to me and might be potentially down the line an opportunity to work with them.
And
So there's
that's the thing, isn't it, Dan? Sorry to cut across you there, but what you just said, I think, is the key piece of advice. If
mm,
you find yourself in a bubble, and you're only seeing the stuff from people that are producing the same thing as you, actually making a deliberate effort to comment on the audience that you're targeting. So if you want to reach people that work in accountancy, for argument's sake, then find the accountancy stuff and comment on that, and find the accountants that are putting things out there. And you might not be connected to them, or you might have quite a loose first degree connection. So I think it takes more effort to punch yourself out of that bubble. And what you've just described, I think, is a great way of doing that.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of round that part of the discussion off, and if obviously anybody's got any other thoughts on this, please feel free to drop it into the comments. But you mentioned earlier about those selfie-style photos traveling less distance than perhaps they had done in the past, from your experience. One of the key things to take out from these switches to the algorithm is that LinkedIn wants you to be more relevant than reaching loads and loads of people. So if you are crystal clear in your mind exactly the kinds of people that you want to engage with, interact with, and you are consistently producing content that is appealing to those kinds of people, you are far better off than chasing virality on the platform, because LinkedIn actually views content going viral as an error. That's not what the platform is built for. It's all about having more targeted, relevant discussions. So you really shouldn't be thinking about, have I hit 10,000 people this month? No, I've hit 1,000, but actually a big chunk of those people were super relevant to what I do and who I need to engage with. Just seen a comment come in from David. So yes, so to your point about whether or not you can be an expert in multiple areas, so it definitely needs to allow people to be experts in multiple areas and consume content from broad areas of interest. Bit far-fetched perhaps, but imagine being a business leader who claims expertise in car manufacturing, space travel, and running social. Just trying to view this myself. Running social media networks, yeah. Imagine if there was somebody that did that. Just wouldn't work. Incidentally, he's still not live on LinkedIn. Mr. Musk is still resisting the lure of it. I think he'd probably get banned pretty quickly. It's a fair point, Daffy. But yeah, so if you're a polymath, how on earth are you going to demonstrate all the things that you know about if LinkedIn doesn't allow you, it doesn't facilitate that and accommodate it?
Should we move on to our question here, Dan?
Let's do this question, and then I think we've overrun. We've subjected these poor people to technical glitches aplenty, so we should probably let them have their lunchtime. Go for the question, Phil.
Okay. Will LinkedIn become less personal or Facebook-like as a result of these changes? So will it actually become less personal?
Okay. 3, 2.
Oh, go on then.
Oh. Okay. Can I make an assumption then about why you're saying no?
Go on then.
Is it because you think that the kinds of people that want to game this algorithm will just find a slightly different way of being able to do it?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, Dan. Yeah. I think what they're trying to do is really hard, and they might eventually get there. But I mean, like, yeah, to your point, not a lot has changed. I think people will just find workarounds, and actually people like to respond to stuff that is personal and easy to reply to, and is less demanding. But I hope I'm wrong, actually. But you think they're going to do it?
I think they will. I think if they can kill the reach of the kind of the main offenders, and by that I mean the types of content that tend to travel far but are super lazy, non-specific, I think it will deter those people from getting involved in it. And again, if I can see, let's say I work in hydrocarbon engineering, if I can start to see more stuff that relates to the people and the things that are happening in the hydrocarbon engineering sector in my feed on a regular basis, I'm going to stick around, I'm going to find more value, and LinkedIn is going to be a more useful tool overall.
Yeah, let's hope they get there.
With fingers crossed indeed. So, thank you everybody for bearing with us as we went through our trials and tribulations. It's not normally like this, I promise.
Well, you know what, Dan? This is my cast iron reason to go to my business partner and say, I need that new Mac.
Yes.
This Mac is just overheating on me. So
I agree.
If
I agree.
Joe's watching this.
If you need a written endorsement for that, let me know. It's been a really good chat. Thank you ever so much for the contributions. If you're watching this on playback, do still drop your comments in, your thoughts in. We'll respond to them all. We'll be back in another couple of weeks' time. But in the meantime, take care, look out for each other, and we will see you again soon.
Stay cool, people.